I know, some of you guys have been waiting for part 3 of this series for quite a long time. I have great news for you. It's happening today, but I have bad news for you. Part 4 might be a bit. Hey, what's up, bookworms and constant readers? We are back finally with my ranking Stephen King series, guys. Today is part 3 of this series, in which we are going to go from 4 Past Midnight all the way to Wizard and Glass. Dark Tower number 4, that's going to be the years 1990 through 1997. Again, apologies for the delay. I did say in part 2 that it was going to be a while because there are a lot of these books I hadn't read since I was a teenager, and I wanted to revisit them before I felt comfortable ranking them in this series. The reason I haven't done a top 10 Stephen King books on this channel, guys, because it's very, very hard, and there's a lot of things I want to reassess at this point in my life. So, like I said, 1990 through 1997 is when King was undergoing a new arc in his career. I think this was when he was fully sober for the first time, and he was dealing with a lot more things than just being the king, the master of horror. He wanted to do some other things, some drama, some thrillers, some of those fun things that go bump in the night, mixed with a little bit of drama and thrillers. And I think that's what we're going to explore today. So, guys, without regurgitating too much of what I've done, here's what I did in parts 1 and 2. My categories, obviously, I don't do S, A, B, C, D, whatever. I do them like this. Ka, and then everything else, obviously, guys, that is the cream of the crop. It rises to the top. My Heart Burns There Too is really, really great. Any other author, it might be, at the top of the list. But for King, it's really, really great, and I'd recommend it to everybody, but not quite up there with the best of the best. You've got to shine. Really, really great stuff. You're really going to enjoy. Well, I really, really enjoyed what I read there. But, there was some room for improvement. Dirty Birdie, not what I would call the worst of the worst, but, it's got some things that I think really, really do drag it down. It'd be harder for me to rank it above that. And then, of course, Shitters. No shitter ever came between me and Christine. I only got one there so far, but again, that is stuff that I would be like, you know what? I would go ahead and pass if I were you. But guys, let's begin here. Now, I don't like to usually do short story or novella collections in this. I'm not doing the short stories on this list. I might add them later, just because I feel like it's really hard to rank them up against novels, because there's so many different things in there. But for the the novella collections, I decided I will go ahead and include them on this list. I went back and did different seasons in part 2 just so I could add that referendum that you guys wanted to the list I was doing. And I think I got to do it by the strength of the books in that series. Now, this has Langoliers, this has Secret Garden, Secret Window, this has Library Policeman, this has Sun King 4. Really, really great books. In fact, I'm going to say this is above Different Seasons when it comes to a full collection of great stories, because that first one, you have some really, really legendary ones, but I felt like Breathing Method kept it from being just perfect, whereas this, he really, really embraced horror again, and he made 4 really just spectacular stories. So I haven't done this beforehand, guys. I don't know where I'm going to put some of these, but like I said, I do think it goes just above Different Seasons, so I'm going to put it right above Different Seasons, but not quite up there with The Shining. But I mean, those 4 stories, Langoliers, I think he's able to take just something amazing in that he takes this huge cast and in 140 pages or so, he makes you give a damn about every single one of them. He's just flexing his muscles on what an incredible character writer that he is. Secret Garden, Secret Window felt a little familiar. Might have felt like something he had done a little bit before. Obviously, it was him trying to get some inner demons out. You got to think that the guy probably gets accused of from all kinds of people being like, you stole my story. That's something that's going to happen to any popular author. The Library Policeman, I think, might be one of his most disturbing stories that he's ever read or wrote. It's one of the ones it's hardest for me to read because there's some things that happen to our main character in the story that is just traumatizing to read. It's really, really tough. And then, of course, Sundog, great idea. Just messing around with technology and stuff that he would do, again, in Cell and things like that. But just, you can tell it's one of those kind of things of that generation where they would always think that the next big advancement in technology was always something a little creepy about it. And honestly, I've always thought Polaroid cameras were pretty creepy. There was always some weird things going on with those things. So that's why I put it there. But yeah, 4 magnificent stories that I think anyone's going to enjoy something out of those. Next up, guys, we got Dark Tower, The Wastelands. Now, I have been doing my Dark Tower reread very, very slowly. I've done the first 5, and that's where I'm currently at right now. But The Wastelands, in my memory, it was like Drawing of the Three or The Wastelands was my favorite Dark Tower book. And I couldn't really pinpoint which one it was. I loved the Drawing of the Three for, all just how unpredictable it was. The idea of just these doors leading to other worlds and things was just really, really fascinating. I'd never seen anything like that in fantasy before. I felt like it completely changed the series. But what I love about The Wastelands is you really start to get that final version of the quartet, as it were, and then you get to see just a real adventure in Midworld. That's what I really, really wanted. I love the stuff bouncing between different worlds, but I love that world that Roland's in. That's the world that I want to know a little bit more about. So on this reread, I was able to definitively say that The Wastelands is an absolutely amazing book and my favorite Dark Tower book, and I am putting it right here behind Salem's Lot, up there at the top with Ka and then everything else. Because, guys, that book, if you want to know all kinds of things about that world and what in the hell is going on this path of the being, that's a great, great adventure to get into. But I really think it's one of those that it could kind of almost stand on its own. I mean, you will have some things where you'll be like, I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what this means. Who are these characters? But as far as just an adventure, I do think it almost can stand on its own because it does have plenty of coming of age for a certain character in there. It does have plenty of self-discovery with another, and then it has the bonding between this quartet. That's where they first start to really feel like a family in just an incredible, sprawling adventure across this wasteland. Really, really great stuff. And obviously, if I'm putting it up here at the top, next to something as great as Salem's Lot, you know it is a great book. Needful Things. Now, Needful Things is one I think is kind of, this whole era in the mid-90s is one that I say is kind of feels underrated because you always see these lists of King fans ranking these books, and all these ones in the 90s always seem to be down towards the bottom third. I've never really understood that because I think he was trying new things. He wanted to kind of get away from just doing horror and do some different things. Now with Needful Things, I think with this, he took what he did in Salem's Lot and he perfected it. And that he made this whole town, this whole living, breathing town, all these different characters. And I mean, there's probably like 60 named characters in Needful Things, and you never once have a problem differentiating who they are. You always know who they are. You're never like, wait, who is this? You always know who they are because he gives them little quirks, little things that make them unique, and he develops them just slowly enough that you really get interested in every single one of them. Now, I think that there are some things that don't work for me. Like there is some stuff that's a little goofy between the different churches in the book, But again, you got one of the most underrated villains that he's ever done in Leland Gaunt. Absolutely compelling villain that really just raised the stakes a lot in that book. You do get your first adventure. Well, it's not actually your first adventure with Alan Pangborn because he was in Dark Half too. But this one, Pangborn is very much the central character in the story, and you get to see a lot of the things that's happened to him since the Dark Half, and it is not pretty. It's an awful, awful journey, honestly, what this character has went through in that time. And this is kind of, I don't want to say like his redemption, but like him finding a reason, to keep going when life seems at its lowest. So it's a great, great character study, but again, of this whole huge town. And Needful Things, I think, upon this reread, it was really, really great. And, man, this is really tough. Where am I going to put this? I want to say it's going to be right about here. I think right there, it's just above those short story, or I'm sorry, those novella collections, and just above something like the Dead Zone, where I think it takes everything about Castle Rock that Dead Zone did great and did it just a little better because of how just amazingly written he did that whole town, that whole community, the way they interact with each other. It's just stunning, stunning stuff. And yeah, I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to just kind of hang out on those streets and see what was the next thing they picked up out of that creepy, creepy little shop. Now, Gerald's Game is kind of an enigma because everyone assumes that they know what this story is about. Okay, someone gets handcuffed to their bed, the person dies, and they're stuck. They're stuck handcuffed to this bed out in the middle of nowhere where no one can help them. They think that's all that it is. But this is a story that deals with trauma. This does with some repressed memory and why maybe some of those things should stay repressed. And I honestly think it has some of the most chilling chapters that he wrote in all of the 90s, some of the scariest stuff. And people be like, scary in Gerald's Game? What are you talking about? I mean, it is terrifying. If you've ever been one of those people who have woke up in the middle of the night and your room is like pitch dark, you can't see anything, and you just know that there's someone else in the room. You just feel like there's someone else there. it explores that, and it is bone-chilling stuff. It really will creep you out, and Moonlight, man, is definitely one of the scariest things he's written because it seems so real. It's something that could happen in real life. It's just terrifying. But the character journey that she goes through in that book is just spectacular. And once you actually realize what's going on in her past, it's just a whole new level of, oh my God, with that story. And the fact that he can take someone handcuffed to a bed for 400 pages and you are absolutely just gripped the whole time, again, just shows the guy is a master. He doesn't have to do the flashy stuff, the action, the big event, really, to show you how you can take a journey with a character. And what she goes through in that book is just amazing. And I wish more people would put more respect on it, because I do think they do think it's just like a fetish book or something, and it's not. There's so much. That's really almost a background player of that book, is her being handcuffed to that bed, because it's all the things that she's thinking about during that time when all she has is just, she's alone with her thoughts while she's starting to go mad a little bit. It's just, man, it's just great. It's just great on the reread. I loved it even more. I honestly think, gosh, it seems like I'm really kind of getting some of the great ones here, and it's just showing how much I really like this stuff he was doing in the 90s here. Man, I don't know if I'm going to put this right here. It seems like I'm putting everything right here this episode. But again, I think that the 90s is just, it really is just like an underrated time period for him. Dolores Claiborne is another one that a lot of people just say, oh, it's, whatever. It's kind of forgettable. I think this is one of the best protagonists that he ever has written, because it shows a lot of things of, the way that women and men were treated differently in that era. And it's done not in like a preachy way. It's done in a very realistic way. Like there's a part where she's trying to, get some money into her bank account, and they won't let her do it without her husband's permission. Yet they did the same thing for her husband, and they never asked for her permission. That right there is just like one of those moments where like just saying like, yeah, I think that things have changed obviously for the better where we're living now, but realize it really wasn't that long ago that society still treated things like that as, the normal. And just, she's one of those characters who just overcomes incredible odds. And it's just a banger of a book. People think it isn't because it's just a confession. The whole thing is just her confession of, what happened at the very beginning of this book. And it's stunning how much it's able to grip you when it really is just her talking, to a sheriff and a deputy about how she did this thing, this big event. And it ties in together with Gerald's Game. It really is a twinner novel, if you will, because there is a big event with an eclipse that is happening at the same time. And there's some things that still, I think, are still a little bit unresolved amongst the Kingdom fans. But it's really well done. I'm not ready to put it above, like, I don't think I put it above like Needful Things yet. I think I'm gonna put it right here at the beginning of You Got the Shine, because it's really great, but there are some things I do wish it was a little longer, honestly, and I do wish we got some things from some of the other characters that were a little underdeveloped that I think that probably could have got it up there into my heartburns there too. But right here, I say it's leading the middle of the pack. I think it's really good. He really could just be on the edge right here, and it's because Dolores is such an amazing protagonist. With Insomnia, now Insomnia is one in my memory I didn't really care for when I read it as a teenager. So I won't lie, I went into this reread kind of with my arms crossed, like, oh man, gotta do this again. Now, but the thing I always say is, in the 90s, I still wanted King to scare me a little bit. I was still adjusting to him, because this is when I was finally starting to get books on release day. I was caught up to real time. With Insomnia, I was like, I'm not interested in like a retirement home age main character. There's a lot of gobbledygook that I don't understand what's going on. And on this reread, it dawns on me, it's because I hadn't read Dark Tower yet. And that book has a ton of Dark Tower stuff in it. So it's one of those almost up there with like Salem's Lot, where I say you almost kind of need to read it, because there is a character that shows up in Dark Tower 7 that you're going to be like, who is this? Who is this? And if you've read Insomnia, it makes so much more sense. Lots of things about the Crimson King in that book as well. So I think it's one of those books where on its own, you may not get as much out of it. But if you've read Dark Tower, I think it's a book that definitely will resonate for you a lot more. So on the reread, it helped a lot. But I'm going to grade this as its own, not as a complimentary piece to The Dark Tower. So I'm going to say I'd put it right around, better than Dark Half, not quite up there with Carrie. I think it has some really, really great stuff in it. Ralph is an okay protagonist. I mean, you are in his corner, you are rooting for him, but there are a lot of side characters I just really never really invested in. I mean, the love interest was like, it was all right, but it was never one where I was like, okay, I'm really like shipping this couple and things like that. But I did appreciate that he wrote some characters that were a little older for a change, because I think he writes kids brilliantly. He really does. He writes, in the 30, 40 age just fine. So this was the first time I thought, okay, I really do appreciate he's writing some of these older characters, talking about some things that you wouldn't usually be talking about with a lot of his characters, and he explores a lot of those things. And if you've ever been one of those people who has suffered from insomnia, not being able to sleep, he captures that really, really well. Now with Rose Madder, I talked about it when I reviewed Rose Madder recently, in that this book I think is going to be very, very divisive. If you have endured, domestic abuse in your relationship, I think it's going to be something that's very, very hard to read. Like I said, personally, I read Stephen King because he will make you uncomfortable. That's what horror is all about, I think. And that book has one of the most horrific prologues I've ever read, even if it is, nothing otherworldly or supernatural. And again, I think that's what makes it scarier, and that this is something that probably happens a lot more than you want to know about in the real world. And it's horrifying. It really is tough to read. Like I said, if you've been through those things, it might be tougher. But the fact that Stephen King to the day still says people come up to him and tell him that Rose Madder was the book that gave them the courage to leave their abusive partner. So I think for that, it resonates really, really well. However, the story, he does seem like he tries to mash two things once. It almost seems like he had two stories and he tried to crush them together. It's like he was writing a domestic abuse drama, and then he watched some special on the Minotaur and the Labyrinth or something to say, hey, how do I work that into my story? It works if you're really into weird King, if you're really into like crazy tales kind of King. I think it works. However, it's like where that book starts and where you think you're going and then where it ends up is like, what changed? So it really does feel like two different books, and I think that brings it down a bit. Also, besides Rosie, I wasn't really crazy about anyone else in the book, so I was really pulling for Rosie. Everyone else was like, and I think that's something he started doing in the 90s, and that he was really always great at character, but he wanted to try to do some new things, and I think that he kind of let up on his character work a little bit to try and mix around with those new things. So a miss for me on some of the characters. The mashing of the genres, I've always appreciated that, like in A Dark Tower, but in a real-world book, it seemed really, really strange where he went with this in the end. So I give him credit for sure for going for it, and that's always something I appreciate with King, when he goes for it. This is one of those, it's kind of mostly a miss. I say it's a mix to positive on this book, but it's going to be, guys, it's going to be right about here. In that, what I didn't like about Talisman, I said, was just one character that really, really annoyed me. But with Rose Madder, it was like one character I cared about, and everyone else, whatever. So, you're not going to have everything be a grand slam, obviously. It hurts my heart a little bit when I have to put one on this row, But it does happen when you have a bibliography as large as his. You're going to have some that don't work as well for you. And that's why when he followed it up with The Green Mile, I was completely blown away. Because I started thinking, okay, this is just a new version of King. He's trying some new things. I respect that. And I started being like, okay, maybe Michael Crichton's going to overtake him as my favorite author. As at the time it was. It was 1A, 1B, Crichton and King. So when The Green Mile came out in these serialized novels, I was in his book club at the time. So I got those serialized novels right away. But it completely floored me. Every single time I was like, oh my God, I've got to have the next one. This is an amazing story, guys. The Green Mile, I think, is without a doubt one of his best books. And it seems like it's one of his less talked about ones, which is amazing because it has a really popular adaptation that a lot of people love. And it's the book, that adaptation is damn near word for word, page for page with the book. There are some things that are added, some things that are taken away, but it is an incredibly faithful adaptation because Frank Darabont's great with King material. He's really, really great with it. But The Green Mile is just an absolutely beautiful, hauntingly beautiful story about, just faith, all kinds of things that I don't want to give away if you're somehow have not seen it yet. Just know that this is a book that if you haven't read it yet, it needs to cut straight to the front of the line. Because it's a truly amazing book. And if you're not in tears at the end of it, I don't know if that heart's still working. Because it is an absolutely stunningly beautiful book with amazing characters. and an amazing journey and just some powerful messages, I think, that just really will hit you hard in the feels. And of course, who doesn't love Mr. Jingles, right, guys? So this is probably going to shock some people, but I'm going to have it right up here. This is an incredible, incredible book. I think it's absolutely incredible, and it was even better on a reread, guys. Because I say that the great thing about King is you read his stuff as a teenager, and you'll get one thing. You read his stuff as an adult, post-kids and stuff, you're going to get something else with it. And I think with a lot of the real-life experience that you have, when you read something like The Green Mile, after you've had those real-life experiences, it's something that'll hit you a little harder, I think. So, yeah, just an absolutely gorgeous book. Can't say enough great things about it, except read it now, immediately, if you haven't yet. I talked about Desperation on the channel recently, so if you caught that, you might know where I'm kind of going with this. Desperation was one of those with that and The Regulators came out on the same day, and I remember that I liked one more than the other, but I couldn't remember which one that it was. After rereading Desperation, I'm hoping it was Regulators I liked more, because this I felt like was some of the shoddiest character work that he's done. I felt like David was done awesome. He always has the preteen, coming of age character with a, under duress, maybe a little bit of, magical or supernatural ability or something in there. That he does that great. He does that better than anyone. That's what's made him the king for so long. He's always going to be the best at that. And that's great in there. He does that stuff perfectly. A little heavy-handed on the religion, which never really bothers me. The Stand, even Dark Tower goes a little heavy-handed sometimes with some of the religious things. That doesn't bother me at all. I think that's fine. With that one, I don't know. It just kind of went a little too much. It kind of leaned a little too much into it. And the fact that besides David and John, I didn't really care about any of the characters. It has some characters I actively hated. And not in like a you love to hate them, hate to love them kind of way. And like I wanted them to go away. I wanted them to get off of my pages. And that was Steve and Cynthia. I just did not like them. I didn't like the relationship. I didn't like the way the dialogue between the two. They just annoyed me. And I felt like I could cut them out, give their parts to some other characters, and it would have been better. And the thing was, besides David and John, I didn't really care about anyone else. And again, like I said, that was twice in the 90s where I felt like his characters just really kind of took a back seat to the setting, to the idea, which is really good. There's really good stuff in Desperation. I felt like the jailbreak aspect stuff, really, really awesome. Really good. The salt mine, all that stuff is really, really good. But the overabundance of characters that I didn't felt like we needed. I felt like it was there just for a body count. And unlike usual, when he has a 700-page book, I wasn't really invested in very many of those characters. And that's a rare miss for him, like I said. And I know that's gotten me some backlash, some people who've been with me with Into the Multiverse forever, being like, we usually agree on Stephen King books, but you missed on this one. I mean, it happens. We're going to have some differences of opinion. But yeah, Desperation, I'd say it's just above Rose Madder, but barely. Just barely. I'd say it would be somewhere for sure around Dark Half and Rose Madder. In between that little span right there is where I compared it to when I reviewed it. And again, these aren't bad books. They're just books I felt like a lot of it didn't work for me enough that I'm going to put it down here with Dirty Birdie. And I'm not going to lie, like I said, it hurts to put some books here, especially when I say that this era of King is vastly underrated. Now, I know that I did say that Desperation and Regulators came out on the same day, so I should be putting that in here. I haven't reread Regulators yet, guys, so I was actually going to stop here at 1996, but I am doing my Dark Tower reread, and I was doing that a little out of order, so I've already done Wizard and Glass, so I decided to go ahead and put it on here, but Regulators I will put on part 4 after I've read it. I didn't want to hold this video until January or February of next year when so many people were asking for it, so that's why I went ahead and made this cheat here. But with Wizard and Glass, I feel like this is the most divisive book in the Dark Tower series, because it seems to be the all-in or I'm out book for everybody. It seems like everyone gets to this point, they either absolutely love the 450-page flashback, or it gets them out of the series. They're just, okay, I don't need that. I want to know what's going on in real time with my content. Why am I learning this backstory? Me, personally, it worked for me because I had wanted Roland's backstory for 3 books. It sucked that waiting for these in real time, I had to wait so long to find out what happened in real time. So that was kind of frustrating. But, if you're like a binge reader, I think that this will be a book that you absolutely love. I don't know. I don't know, because I feel like there are a lot of people that were doing that Dark Tower read-along. And it was kind of mixed. And I felt like I've had that the entire time I've tried selling the series to people is they will get to this book and it's always where they either stall out or they're like, oh, I'm all in. I can't wait to see what happens. For me, it was like I loved it. I wanted that backstory. I wanted to know everything. Who are these people that Roland is always talking about? And you get that backstory and you see why Roland is such a damaged character, why he is so obsessed to a fault with the tower. And you get a lot of those answers. But again, like I said, if you were super invested in the real-time journey and you just want to see those characters going to the tower, it will feel like a pit stop that overstays its welcome a little bit for you. So it works great for me. I think it's some of the best, as far as like it's the most fantasy I feel like his books are in the Dark Tower. So I am going all the way right here, guys. Wait a second. Yeah. I think I'd go about right there. So, guys, you know I love the Dark Towers. Of course, I'm going to have these up here a little high. But, yeah, I would definitely put Wizard and Glass right there above Misery. But not quite as good as the drawing of the three. But pretty much almost on par with it. So, that's where I am at from 1990 through 1997 with a little asterisk for the Regulators, which I'll put on, like I said, Part 4. So, when is Part 4 coming, guys? It's going to be a bit. It is going to be a bit. I am going to continue with Into the Multiverse like I have been doing over the course of the 3 years I've been running this channel. It's something I want to take my time with. It's nothing I want to rush. I have other plans. And, rereads don't take priority with me. But, I do plan to do Regulators in January, and I plan to do Bag of Bones in February. So it's something I'll still be rolling through. But if you're anxiously awaiting Part 4, I mean, guys, it's going to be a wait. Because, like I said, I got to reread all these books. But I'm thinking I think I'll probably go from like 1997 to 2004. After I finish my Dark Tower reread will be the best time, I think, to go ahead and do part number 4. But I want to thank you guys so much for sticking with me while I've been doing this. I'm really sorry if you want me to just kind of run through this, but I feel like this is my favorite author. I want to make sure that I do this right, so I have no problems taking my time with it, and I hope that you guys can be patient. So what are you guys thinking about this? Was I too harsh on some of them? Was I too kind to others? I mean, this is my opinion, but I would love to hear what you think. So instead of telling me why my picks suck, why don't you go ahead and drop down below and tell me, what you would do differently. I always appreciate hearing those things. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you in the comments below.